Hi folks, in this video we're going to go through an example where we're going to take a sketch that a student draws. They're going to try to be very accurate in that sketch for an equation that they're given, and then on the following slide, after they've clicked finish, then on the following slide they're going to see how close they were to the actual line that they should have been drawing. So let's jump right into the activity. I've got things set up. I've got a note, a button, and a sketch. It doesn't look like a sketch right now. That's because when I added it, it looked like a sketch, and then I just changed the background to editable graph. So it's named Sketch 2, Directions 2, Button 2. Everything's been filled in, and I changed the button label so that it says finished. So let's jump right into the CL here, and we'll start off with read only true, because the students aren't being marked for how correct they are with their sketch. It's just sort of sketch it. And then we want to be able to disable the sketch with the button. So let's call the button a generic name like that. And that way, when I do this with other slides, I can just copy and paste and just change this one little piece right here rather than rewriting it constantly every single time that I copy and paste. So we want to disable the sketch as long as the button that we're using has a timer on it that is anything greater than 0. And so if we go to preview this, and I can just sort of draw a line, not an accurate one, but I can draw a line and say finished. Now my sketching tools are all grayed out at the top, and I can't sketch on this anymore. So that's good. But then when I go to the next screen, I want that thing to appear here, the same thing that I just sketched. So that's our next step, is to add the CL so that we can bring that over into slide 3. So what are we bringing over? We're bringing over sketch 2. So when we go to slide 3, I'm going to go into the CL for the graph. And in here, I'm going to use a background command. The background command will help with carrying over the background, and it needs 2 things. So we're going to start off with a layer stack and a sketch layer. And it needs to know from where. So that was sketch 2, and it was a sketch. And the other thing is a layer stack. Let me get rid of that space in there. Oh, sorry, not a layer stack, a sketch layer. All right, sketch layer, and that was also for sketch 2. And it was the current stroke. But just like I did on the last slide, I put a shortcut whenever possible. I'm using sketch 2 here, I'm using sketch 2 here, possibly in other spots. We can really cut down on time when going to copy and paste if we do something generic at the top like this. And then we make sure that the first time that we do this code, everything's just sort of in there in a generic way, so that when we go to copy and paste, we just have to change this one number up top, and everything down below will fill in with that when the computer reads through it. So let's test this out. We go back a slide, we draw something. I'll draw kind of a face. There we go. And then I go to the next slide, and there's my face. Now I didn't hit finish, so I can kind of do some little details on it. But as soon as I hit finished, it's locked. I can't do anything anymore. And over here, my next step is to press how'd I do. But as you can see, the button's not linked to anything at this time. So that's our next job, is to link that button to something. What do I want to have happen when the student presses how'd I do? I want that button to start a timer, and that timer starts an animation. Now, you may not have done animation before, but this animation is going to be pretty short, so I think I can explain it quick enough for this video. Let's dive right in. We're going to go to graph 3, and we're going to go into the graph itself. There's 2 things that we want to do in here. So I'm going to make 2 folders. One is the animation, and the one above that is going to be the function that we want to graph. Y equals 1/4 x minus 3 was the function. And usually I won't do this, but this time I actually want to set some restrictions as to where that graph is going to be. Thinking about what the student will see on their screen, I want them to see it as though it's a full line. Like, I don't want them to know that I cut it off at all. So I'm going to have their view screen at a x minimum of -10 and an x maximum of +10. So I'm just going to restrict it to those values. All right, so you can see that I've now shortened that line considerably. And this will help with the animation. So describing how the animation, the idea behind the animation is a little bit tricky, but I want you to maybe think about if I were to draw a line. I would have like my starting point right here, and then I would start and draw that line. But when I'm at the very beginning, because I'm at the starting point, my distance away from the starting point is 0. So my starting point and where I am right now are the same number. And then they get slightly further apart and further apart and further apart and further apart. So that's what I want to have happen here. So imagine if this value right here was -10, then I'm at the same point that I start at. But then let's say that this changes to -9. Now my line is just a little bit longer than before. And what about if it goes to -8 and -7 and -6 and -5? So if I can create this, and I'll just keep changing these as I go, if I can create this with like a slider or somehow change these numbers so that it goes almost there, all the way to +10, then the student is going to see on their screen a line that looks as though it's being drawn. So we want to basically fool the computer to keep changing these numbers so that on the student side of things, it looks like, oh, amazing, it's being drawn right now. That's where the animation comes into play. So if you haven't done animation before, we need a timer. So we're going to use T0. Oops, T0 equals 0. I learned this from watching Suzanne's video, Suzanne at Desmos's video, and it was awesome. So I use it quite a bit now. I'll just name it animate just to keep it kind of short. Animate of t equals the median. Watch Suzanne's video if you want to know why the median. She does a great job explaining it, and I am going to run out of time if I explain it in here. But once you have the median set up, now you can use the animate function to do what you need. So let's use the animate function, and we'll call it a sub 1. And so I just changed the animate function just a little bit to incorporate T0, that timer. That's going to be from our button. T0 is going to be our time since press on the button. And time can't go below 0 in this, so we'll have 0 as our smaller number. And I want you to watch as I start the timer and I press play and the timer's growing in its numerical value. I want you to watch what happens to A1, A sub 1. It's going at lightning speed, but look at that. It just stops at 1 even though the timer's still going. And that's the magic of the animation. Again, Suzanne explains all of this in her video. You can go back and watch that. But I've got to finish this video up. So we want to use this A sub 1. It's going to count from 0 to 1. And so I want to go back to this number, and I want that number to start at -10 and finish at 10. So what about if we started at -10 and then we add something to it? Well, if this number that we're adding continues to change, then it could get to what number we need, which would be a total after it's been added of +10. So we would need to add 20 to get it to +10. But we don't want it to just stay like that. We want to add in something that will constantly change it, like a slider. So that's where the animation comes into play, because that animation is going to start off at 0. So if that animation starts off at 0, it's going to change this portion of the problem to 0. And when added on to -10, this whole thing is going to have a value of -10, meaning that when this timer is 0, we're not going to see anything. As the timer grows, like when it's at 1, then it's going to be 1 multiplied by 20, which is 20, and 20 added to -10 is going to get us to this point right here. And then we can continue going to 2, substitute the 2 in, multiply, and then add. We're right here. But when we get to 3, there it is, multiply 3 times 20, add to -10, we're here. And because the timer is not going to go, because the animation of a sub 1 is not going to go above 1, the timer, even though the time is going to continue to move on, that animation is not going to grow any larger than 1, meaning that this is not going to continue going. It'll stop where I've asked it to stop, which works out perfectly for this. So again, that's just going to, it's just going to look like a line being drawn. So that's all tied into T0, which needs to be the button 3, that activates that to happen. The T0 is in the graph. So what we want to do is add in the graph CL, we want to add in a number of T0, and we want the button to start it up. So the button, let's go back up here and add in button equals button 3. All right, so the button time since press is what we want the T0 value to be. So let's go back here and run it from slide 2 on. So I'm supposed to draw a line, -3, up 1 over 4, up 1 over 4, 1 and 4, 1 and 4. I think, oops, I think I might have it. I'm even going to use this line just to get it a little bit more accurate, hopefully. And let's see how I do. How'd I do? Look at that. That's gorgeous. Now, one thing that's not so pretty about this is that this zoom setting is really undesirable for me. I don't like how that looks. So I like to go into, let's see, this is graph 3. I like to go in there and I like to put in the bounds. Bounds, make bounds, the X, the Y, the Y. And it's min, max, kind of. Like X min, X max, Y min, Y max. That's the format of that. All right, so see how it defaults to that? That's nice. So if I go back and I'll do a quicker sketch this time. How'd I do? we get our answer drawn in there, and you can see how close you are. You can also go into the graph and probably want to change the color just so that it doesn't do it in the same color that the student does. Maybe increase the thickness of it. And we can now see how we do. Beautiful. All right, that's it for this video.